Someone has fallen in love with you, but being together is impossible. The reasons will shock you. Sometimes the person who loves you most is the person who knows they cannot have you. And that kind of love is confusing, because you may have noticed something strange about her. She stays close, but not too close. She looks at you differently when she thinks you aren't paying attention. She remembers small things you mentioned weeks ago. Maybe she finds reasons to talk to you. Maybe she becomes unusually quiet around you. Maybe there are moments when you can almost feel something between you. And then suddenly, she pulls back. You tell yourself you're imagining it. Maybe she's just being friendly. Maybe you're reading too much into a look, a message, a pause. But then she does something again, something that makes you wonder. And this is where men often get stuck, not because they don't understand attraction, but because attraction isn't always the same thing as permission. Someone can develop deep feelings for you and still decide not to act on them. That sounds contradictory. Human beings are full of contradictions. Think about the woman who laughs with you for 20 minutes, then becomes distant the moment the conversation gets personal. Or the woman who seems genuinely disappointed when you don't show up, but acts almost relieved when you leave. That combination can feel impossible to interpret. But sometimes the distance isn't evidence that she feels nothing. Sometimes distance is how a person manages feelings they don't know what to do with. And before you turn that into a romantic fantasy, slow down. It doesn't automatically mean she's secretly in love with you. There can be many explanations for confusing behavior. But if there really is something emotional happening underneath, the reason may have less to do with how much she feels, and much more to do with what those feelings would cost her. That's the part most people miss. Because when you like someone, your mind naturally asks, how can I get closer? But when someone believes closeness could create consequences, their mind may ask a completely different question. How do I stop this before it becomes something I can't control? Maybe there's another relationship involved. Maybe your lives are moving in completely different directions. Maybe there's a serious difference in circumstances that makes a future together unrealistic. Maybe one of you has responsibilities the other person cannot simply walk away from. Or maybe she has already experienced enough emotional pain to know that wanting something doesn't necessarily mean pursuing it is wise. And there is something particularly painful about that kind of restraint, because she may not be rejecting you as a person. She may be rejecting the possibility. Those are not the same thing. Imagine sitting across from someone you genuinely care about. You want to tell him what you've been feeling. You almost do. Then you picture everything that would happen afterward. The conversations, the expectations, the changes, the possibility of losing the relationship entirely. So you swallow the words, you smile, you talk about something ordinary. And later, when you're alone, you wonder whether saying nothing was the right decision. If you've ever been on the receiving end of that kind of silence, you know how painful it can be. Because silence gives your imagination too much room. And what makes this even more complicated is that sometimes the person who is fighting their feelings will accidentally reveal them through the very things they're doing to hide them. A little jealousy, an unusual sensitivity to your attention, remembering details she supposedly wasn't listening to, creating distance, then finding another reason to come back. But there's one reason someone may choose impossible love over possible love. And when you understand it, her behavior may suddenly look completely different. There are feelings people can tolerate in private that they would never allow themselves to live out in public. And that distinction matters. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't admitting, even to yourself, I care about him. The hardest part is accepting what that feeling might ask you to do. Picture her alone at night. The conversation you had earlier keeps replaying in her mind. Not the whole conversation. One sentence, one look. The way you smiled when she said something vulnerable. She tells herself it meant nothing. Then she remembers it again. She picks up her phone, looks at your name, doesn't message, puts the phone down. A few minutes later, she checks it again. Not because she's necessarily planning to confess anything. Maybe she's trying to convince herself she shouldn't. That internal struggle can create behavior that looks incredibly confusing from the outside. Warm one day, distant the next. Interested, then guarded. Comfortable, then suddenly careful. And you may interpret that as games. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it's conflict. There's a difference. A person can genuinely want emotional closeness while simultaneously believing that acting on that desire would create more pain than happiness. Maybe she knows that being with you would disappoint people she cares about. Maybe the timing is wrong. Maybe there are family expectations, existing commitments, distance, major differences in life circumstances, or responsibilities that neither of you can simply ignore. Or perhaps the biggest obstacle isn't outside of her at all, it's inside. She may not trust herself with the intensity of what she feels. That sounds strange, doesn't it? But imagine someone who has spent years keeping emotional control. Then you arrive, and suddenly she's thinking about you when she didn't intend to. Suddenly, your opinion matters more than she expected. Your silence affects her mood. Your attention feels comforting. Your absence feels noticeable. That's when attraction can become frightening. Not because you're dangerous, because vulnerability is. When someone realizes, this person can affect me, they have to confront something they may have spent years avoiding, the possibility of being hurt. And this is where self-protection becomes complicated. She might tell herself that you're not right for her. She might focus on your differences. She might become overly practical. She might even convince herself that the feelings are temporary. Sometimes people do this because they genuinely believe it. Sometimes they do it because believing it is easier than facing what they actually want. But don't make the mistake of assuming every woman who pulls away is secretly overwhelmed with love. That's not fair to her, and it isn't fair to you. Distance can mean many things. Disinterest, uncertainty, fear, personal boundaries, or simply a desire not to pursue the relationship. You have to look at the larger pattern, not one glance or one message. And if she truly does have feelings she cannot act on, there is often another subtle sign. She may begin protecting the connection from herself. She doesn't flirt as openly. She avoids certain conversations. She changes the subject when things become emotionally intimate. She may even discourage you from getting too close, and that can hurt. Because from your side, it feels like rejection. You wonder what you did wrong. You replay conversations. You ask yourself whether you weren't attractive enough, interesting enough, successful enough. But what if the obstacle has nothing to do with your worth? What if she isn't stepping away because you aren't enough? What if she's stepping away because in her mind, you matter too much? That possibility can be emotionally powerful, but there's something even more uncomfortable beneath it. Sometimes the person who can't be with you doesn't just fear losing you. She fears what choosing you would force her to lose somewhere else. And once you understand what that somewhere else is, the entire situation can become much harder to look at. What she might be afraid of losing isn't always another person. Sometimes it's the life she has already built. That's difficult to understand when you're standing outside of it. You see two people who seem to connect. You notice the conversations that last longer than they need to, the strange comfort between you, the way she seems to soften when you're around. And you think, almost instinctively, if we both feel this, why don't we just do something about it? Because you are looking at the feeling. She may be looking at the consequences. Those are two very different perspectives. Imagine someone who has spent years building a particular life, a career, a family structure, a reputation, a relationship, a routine that may not be perfect, but at least feels familiar. Then someone enters her life who makes her question parts of it. Not necessarily because he promises some extraordinary future. Maybe it's much simpler. He listens differently. He notices her. She can be herself around him. She laughs more naturally. She feels understood in a way she didn't realize she had been missing. And suddenly, something that was buried becomes visible. That can be exhilarating and terrifying, because emotional connection has a way of exposing dissatisfaction you were previously able to ignore. This is why some people become strangely distant after moments of closeness. The closeness didn't necessarily make them lose interest. It made the feelings harder to dismiss. She may walk away from a conversation with you feeling happy, then feel guilty for being happy. She may catch herself waiting for your message, then become irritated with herself for waiting. She may imagine what being with you could look like, then immediately imagine everything that could go wrong. That push and pull can become exhausting. And if you're the man on the other side of it, you may feel exhausted too, because inconsistency creates uncertainty. You start watching, you notice response times, you analyze punctuation, you wonder why she used that word instead of another. You remember the exact expression on her face, you begin collecting evidence. Not because you're obsessed with games, because your mind wants an answer. It wants certainty, but relationships rarely give us certainty before vulnerability. And here's where you need to be careful. When someone is emotionally conflicted, it's tempting to become the person who rescues them from that conflict. You might think, if I just show her I'm serious, if I give her enough reassurance, if I wait long enough, if I prove that what we have is real, maybe she'll finally choose you. Sometimes people do change their decisions. But love cannot be built on convincing someone to override their own boundaries. If she has decided that a relationship isn't possible, respecting that decision matters, even if you believe her feelings are deeper than her words. Because there is a painful difference between being loved and being chosen. You can be deeply cared for and still not be someone's partner. You can matter enormously to someone and still not fit into the life they're willing to live. That doesn't make the connection fake. It makes it complicated. And sometimes, strangely, that is why the feelings become even stronger. Because what cannot be fully expressed often gets carried internally. A memory becomes more important. A conversation gets replayed. A person becomes associated with a version of life that never happened. And that's where longing can become powerful. Not because the relationship was perfect, but because it was unfinished. There's a psychological weight to unfinished emotional experiences. You don't get the ordinary disappointments, the boring Tuesday nights, the arguments about money, the irritating habits, the realities that eventually turn fantasy into something ordinary. Instead, the mind preserves the possibility, and possibility can be incredibly seductive. So if she has fallen for you, but believes being together is impossible, she may not be fighting only her feelings for you. She may be fighting the future she imagines whenever those feelings become too strong. And there's one particular moment when that fight becomes hardest. The moment she realizes you might finally stop waiting for her. That's when something inside the dynamic can change. Not because you suddenly become more attractive. Not because you discover some clever psychological trick. Because she realizes the possibility of actually losing you. And those are very different things. For a long time, she may have felt that you would still be there, even if she pulled away, even if she became quiet, even if she needed distance. There was a certain emotional safety in believing you hadn't completely disappeared. Then one day, you stop reaching. Not dramatically. You don't announce it, you don't punish her, you simply stop organizing your emotional life around someone who hasn't chosen to be part of it. And she notices. Maybe your messages become less frequent. Maybe you stop searching for excuses to see her. Maybe when she speaks to you, you're still warm, but you're no longer waiting for something. That last part matters. People can often sense when someone's attention is no longer trying to earn an outcome. And sometimes that changes how they experience the relationship. She may suddenly wonder whether she misunderstood how much you cared. She may start thinking about conversations she previously dismissed. She may remember moments when you were patient with her. She may ask herself why she feels disappointed that you're moving on when she was the one who created the distance. That can be uncomfortable. Because now she has to confront something she could avoid while you were waiting. A choice. Not necessarily the choice to be with you, but the choice to accept that you may no longer be emotionally available in the same way. And here's something men sometimes misunderstand. If she comes closer at that point, it doesn't automatically mean she's ready for a relationship. Sometimes losing access to someone's attention simply activates fear of loss. That's human. It doesn't necessarily equal love. So don't confuse renewed attention with a promise. Watch what she actually does. Does she communicate honestly? Does she acknowledge the situation? Does she respect your boundaries? Does she take responsibility for her choices? Does she make space for a real relationship if that's genuinely what she wants? Those questions matter far more than whether she suddenly texts you more often. Because mature love isn't only about intensity, it's about capacity. Someone can feel something enormous and still lack the ability, freedom, readiness, or willingness to build a healthy relationship around it. That may be one of the hardest truths to accept. You could be deeply wanted and still not be someone's choice. And if you understand that, something inside you begins to settle. You stop asking, "How do I make her choose me?" And you start asking a more important question. Is the relationship she is capable of offering actually good for me? That question changes everything. Because when you're emotionally invested, it's easy to become fascinated by the possibility of being chosen. You imagine the confession, the message you've been waiting for, the moment she finally says what you've suspected all along. But imagine she does. Imagine she tells you she loves you. And then nothing else changes. The circumstances remain impossible. The fear remains. The responsibilities remain. The uncertainty remains. Would the confession actually solve anything? Or would it simply give a name to something that still cannot become a life? That's where emotional maturity begins to feel less romantic and more painful. Sometimes the kindest thing two people can do is admit that a powerful connection doesn't automatically create a workable relationship. And sometimes walking away isn't proof that the love wasn't real. It may be proof that someone finally understood the difference between wanting a person and being able to build a life with them. But there's still one question left. What happens to those feelings after you stop chasing the impossible? Because they don't always disappear. Sometimes they change into something neither person expected. Sometimes love doesn't end when the relationship becomes impossible. It simply changes shape. And that's a difficult thing to accept when part of you is still waiting for a different ending. Maybe you never get the confession. Maybe she never tells you how often she thought about you. Maybe years later, you still remember one particular afternoon, one conversation, one look that seemed to contain more than either of you said. And you wonder, was it real? Did she feel it too? There may never be a perfect answer, but you don't have to turn uncertainty into obsession. You can allow something to have mattered without needing it to become yours. That's a very different kind of strength. Because when you're emotionally attached to someone who cannot be with you, the mind often creates a strange bargain. It says, if I just wait a little longer, maybe circumstances will change. Maybe she'll realize. Maybe one day. And hope can be beautiful. But hope can also quietly keep you standing in the same place for years. There comes a moment when you have to ask yourself something that has nothing to do with her. What is this waiting costing me? Are you becoming less open to someone who actually can choose you? Are you comparing every new woman to a relationship that never had to face ordinary reality? Are you holding on to an imagined future because the imagined version can never disappoint you? That's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes the impossible person feels safer than the available one, because the impossible person cannot fully reject the relationship. There is no ordinary relationship to test the fantasy, no difficult mornings, no misunderstandings about money, no disagreements about priorities, no moment when you discover that the person you idealized has flaws that require patience. The connection stays suspended in possibility, and possibility can feel almost sacred. But your life happens in reality, with real people, real choices, real conversations, real consequences. If she truly cared about you, she may eventually want something very simple for you, not to keep you waiting, not to keep you emotionally attached, not to remain the center of your private world forever. She may want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include her. And if you care about her, you may eventually want the same thing for her. That's when the story becomes less about getting the person and more about becoming honest with yourself. Maybe she loved you. Maybe she still carries feelings she doesn't talk about. Maybe she remembers you more often than you know. But you don't need to spend your life proving it. You don't need to decode every glance. You don't need to test her. You don't need to create jealousy just to see whether she reacts. You don't need to become colder to make her chase you. Those things can create emotional noise, but they rarely create clarity. Clarity usually comes from something much quieter, a direct conversation, a boundary, a decision. Sometimes it's simply saying, I care about you, but I can't stay in something undefined, and then meaning it. That may be the moment she realizes what she truly wants. Or it may be the moment you realize you have been waiting for an answer that she was never able to give. Either way, you get something valuable back. Your life, your attention, your ability to love someone who is actually available to receive it. And perhaps years from now, when you think about her, you won't remember the situation as a failure. You'll remember it as one of those strange encounters that showed you something about your own heart. You learned that attraction isn't always enough, that love and timing are not the same thing, that being deeply cared for doesn't guarantee compatibility, and that sometimes the most painful sentence in a relationship isn't, "I don't love you." It's, "I do. I just can't." If you've ever experienced something like this, you know why that sentence can stay with a person for years. Because sometimes two people can genuinely matter to each other and still have to let each other go.